Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're tackling something pretty interesting, I think.
Yep.
The rivalry between Kendrick Lamar and Drake.
Oh, yeah.
But, but, but,
It's a good one.
it's not just, typical, like, celebrity beef. You know what I mean?
Right.
Our source material is framing it as, like, a strategic war.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets pretty deep, man.
I know. I was fascinated when I saw this.
They're bringing in Sun Tzu. They're bringing in Robert Greene.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about, like, ancient armies
Yeah.
instead of hip-hop.
Yeah. Connecting those classic philosophies of conflict
Right.
to a modern rap feud is, it really makes you think.
Yeah, how does that apply? So it's not just about dropping diss tracks, is it?
No, not at all.
So source is saying it's like an information and perception war.
Right.
Almost like, a battle for the hearts and minds of hip-hop fans.
Absolutely.
Like, what do you make of that?
I mean, it's really interesting to think about it that way. I mean, think about how image matters in the music industry.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's not enough to just be talented.
Yeah.
You have to know how to package and present that talent, and that's even more true now in the age of social media.
So it's like they're both vying for that title of, like, king of hip-hop.
Right.
But, like, the battlefield is public perception.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the charts,
It's the narrative.
Mhm.
Who's more authentic? Who's pushing the boundaries?
Yeah.
Who's shaping the future of the genre?
Right.
And that's really, that battle takes on a whole new complexity when you think about, like, the internet and
Yeah.
social media and how information just spreads.
Okay, so let's break down this, like, information war idea a little bit more.
Right.
One of the things that the source points to is they say that, like, Drake's weak point is his perceived authenticity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He's sometimes seen as lacking that. How could that be a vulnerability in this, like, war?
Well, I mean, for a lot of hip hop fans, authenticity is it's key. It's like the foundation, right?
Yeah.
So if there's a question about an artist's, like, realness,
Yeah.
that can be a real weakness.
Oh, yeah.
And what this source suggests is that Kendrick might be playing on this,
Okay.
using his own reputation for being authentic, for, keeping it real,
Yeah.
to really draw a contrast with Drake, who's seen as more polished,
Yeah.
more commercial.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that something that you've ever noticed?
Yeah, for sure.
Like how artists cultivate a certain persona and then how that affects the way you see their music.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it's impossible to separate the two, right?
I mean, the music is always going to be colored by who the artist is
Mm-hmm.
or who they present themselves to be.
It's totally, yeah.
And they even bring up Kendrick's Super Bowl performance
Oh, yeah.
as like a prime example of this.
Right.
Performing all right.
On that global stage, the imagery, the message of resilience,
Yeah.
it all plays into that.
And it was such a powerful statement, not just, musically, but visually too.
Yeah.
And it really just reinforced that idea of Kendrick as this, like, conscious artist,
Yeah.
connected to his roots and the issues that matter. And strategically,
Mm-hmm.
it might have been a way to just kind of subtly contrast himself with Drake's
Yeah.
more pop-oriented approach.
It's like he's using every opportunity to kind of reinforce this image of authenticity.
Yeah.
Now, here's something I found intriguing. The source talks about Kendrick's strategic use of silence.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And,
Yeah.
and it seems kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah. In a war of words, you would think.
Right.
You would think you'd want to be, as loud as possible.
Be firing back, right?
Exactly.
They even quote Sun Tzu, subduing the enemy without fighting.
That's fascinating.
How does that fit into this whole strategy?
I mean, in a world where everybody's always fighting for attention,
Yeah.
sometimes the most powerful move is to just hold back.
Right.
Right. Create a sense of anticipation, a sense of mystery.
Yeah.
It's like building tension in a movie.
Yeah.
Right. Like the silence
Right.
just makes the eventual payoff so much more powerful.
Yeah. So Kendrick's silence isn't just him being quiet. It's actually a deliberate tactic
Yeah, it's deliberate.
to control the narrative.
He's controlling the narrative.
Yeah.
And he's amplifying the impact
Yeah.
of his moves.
Yeah.
By choosing when to engage, he forces Drake to react on his terms.
It's like it's a subtle power play,
Yeah, it is. It's very subtle.
but potentially very effective.
Yeah, very. Now, speaking of power plays,
Mm-hmm.
The source brings in Robert Greene
Oh, yeah.
and his ideas about image and power.
Right.
And they say both Kendrick and Drake are carefully cultivating specific public images.
Right.
Yeah.
Kendrick, the authentic, socially conscious artist,
Mm-hmm.
Drake, the commercially successful hit maker.
Right.
How do these images become weapons in this rivalry?
Well, if you think of each artist's image as a persona, as something carefully constructed,
Okay.
then they can use those personas to kind of sway public opinion
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately gain an advantage in this war.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're playing chess, you know, where each piece is their image, their carefully constructed image,
Right.
and the moves are made through songs, performances,
Right.
even, social media posts.
Give me a concrete example. How would that work in practice?
Okay, well, let's take the idea of authenticity again.
Okay.
If Kendrick is reinforcing this image of himself as the real artist through his music, through his actions, even his silence,
Yeah.
he's subtly setting a standard, right?
Oh, okay.
And by doing that, he's sort of implicitly raising questions about Drake's, more commercial approach, which some people might see as prioritizing like hits over substance.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not a direct attack, but it can still be really effective.
It's like he's playing the long game.
Yeah, right.
He's building up this image that then casts a shadow
Yeah.
over his rival's moves.
And it all ties back to this idea of information control.
Yeah.
You're subtly influencing how people perceive not just the music,
Right.
but the artists themselves.
The source uses the term asymmetric warfare
Uh-huh.
to describe Kendrick's approach.
Okay.
They're saying he focuses on quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like he's choosing his battles carefully,
Yeah.
making each move count instead of constantly engaging.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating parallel to like guerrilla warfare,
Okay.
where a smaller, more agile force can really take on like a larger opponent
Yeah.
by being smart about it,
Yeah.
picking their battles, maximizing their impact.
Yeah.
And in this context, I guess you could see Kendrick as the guerrilla fighter,
Yeah.
aiming for targeted strikes.
Yeah.
That really disrupt Drake's dominance without needing to match his output, song for song.
Yeah.
Do you ever see this kind of strategy in other areas of your life?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, like, in business, in politics, even personal relationships sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It can feel very strategic.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So it's not about flooding the market with music.
Well,
It's about making each release a strategic event.
exactly. It's about carefully selecting your targets
Yeah.
and making sure each move has the maximum impact.
Right. And that brings us back to information control, right?
right.
How do you make sure your message cuts through all the noise?
That's the real
Step
strife.
what the source highlights next.
Yeah.
This idea of information control in the digital age.
Yeah.
They're suggesting that Kendrick might be using social media,
Oh, yeah.
interviews, performances, all of it
Yeah.
to shape how the public sees this whole rivalry.
Right.
How would that work in practice?
Well, think about it. Every time Kendrick gives an interview, releases a song,
Yeah.
or even just like posts something online,
Yeah.
he has an opportunity to shift the narrative in his favor,
Okay.
right? Like it might be a comment about, staying true to yourself,
Right.
or a performance that really emphasizes, a certain aspect of his artistry.
Yeah.
He's constantly putting out these carefully crafted messages,
Yeah.
trying to make sure that it's his narrative that
Yeah.
takes hold.
It's almost like he's playing 4D chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
Right. He's thinking steps ahead,
Yeah.
anticipating reactions,
Yeah.
using his opponent's moves to his advantage.
This level of strategic thinking, it's not just fascinating, in the context of this rap rivalry. It raises questions for all of us, right?
Right.
Like in an age of information overload,
Mm-hmm.
how do we filter out the noise?
Yeah.
How do we know what to believe?
Yeah.
Who to trust?
Yeah. That's the real challenge.
Those are questions we all need to be asking ourselves.
I agree.
Because whether we realize it or not, we're all being influenced
Yeah.
by the information that we're consuming.
Right.
And the more we understand how it works,
Oh.
the better equipped we are to deal with it.
Yeah, to navigate it all.
But we've got a lot more ground to cover in this deep dive. So
Yeah.
let's keep going.
Right.
We just explored how this whole Kendrick Drake thing might be less about like the music itself and more about controlling the narrative, you know?
Yeah.
It's like a chess match
Yeah.
playing out on this huge public stage.
Exactly. And it's not just about like, diss tracks or album sales or whatever. It also kind of highlights some interesting tensions within hip hop culture itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the source talks about this, like, clash of values.
Yeah.
With Kendrick representing this more, like, authentic, socially conscious side of rap,
Right.
while Drake kind of embodies this more commercially driven, pop-infused sound.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that distinction?
Oh, that's interesting.
Is it really that, black and white?
I mean, it's a really interesting observation, and I think it reflects this tension that's been present in hip hop really since the beginning.
Yeah.
It's this balance between artistic integrity and commercial success, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes you think about like what we value in music, what we value in entertainment in general.
Totally.
Like, are we drawn to just raw talent and social commentary, or are we looking for catchy hooks and mainstream appeal? What do you think, listener?
Yeah, what are you drawn to?
Yeah.
What's more compelling? Because it's different for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. But it's interesting to kind of see how these two artists, they really do embody these different approaches.
Right, yeah.
And they've both achieved incredible success, which I think suggests that maybe there's room for both, right?
For sure, yeah.
In the modern musical landscape, there's room for different approaches.
Absolutely, yeah. It speaks to how dynamic hip hop is as a genre.
Yeah.
It can evolve. It can encompass all these different
styles and
perspectives.
Yeah. But it does also kind of highlight this ongoing debate, right?
Right.
About what constitutes real hip hop.
Yeah.
In the 21st century. Is it about staying true to the roots?
Yeah.
Is it about, pushing boundaries?
Yeah.
Experimenting with new sounds?
Right.
This rivalry, I think, is kind of a key battleground in that conversation.
And the fact that it's playing out like so publicly,
right,
with each artist like making these moves and counter moves, it just makes it so much more fascinating.
Yeah, it really is.
It's like we're watching a real-time case study in like art, commerce, cultural values,
law there,
all colliding in this digital age.
Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head, I think. What's so intriguing to me is how this rivalry it goes beyond, just the two people involved, right?
Yeah.
It's like this, it reflects these larger trends in how we consume information.
Right.
How we form our opinions, how we define like success even in this world where we're just surrounded by media.
So how does this information war play out in our everyday lives? Are we all just like pawns in this bigger game?
I mean, not necessarily.
Right.
But I do think it's important to be aware of these forces at play, right? The subtle ways that information is used to shape how we see things, to influence the choices we make. I mean, whether it's, a rap rivalry, a political campaign, or even just like, which brand of cereal you buy at the grocery store.
Right.
There are messages everywhere, designed to kind of sway you one way or the other.
So what can we do about it?
Right.
How can we become like, smarter consumers of information?
Yeah.
How do we avoid being manipulated?
Well, I think the key is critical thinking.
Right.
Right. We need to learn how to like evaluate information, to identify biases, to consider different perspectives, instead of just passively accepting, everything we see and hear. We got to start asking ourselves questions like, who's presenting this information? What are their motivations?
Right.
What's the bigger context?
It's like we need to become like information detectives.
Yes.
Right.
That's a great way to put it.
Constantly questioning and analyzing the world around us.
Which I know sounds like a lot of work,
but it's important, right?
But it's important.
Yeah.
And the more we do it, the better we get at it.
Right.
The better we get at kind of navigating the complexities of the information age.
And who knows, maybe we can learn a thing or two from these like, strategic masterminds like Kendrick who seem to really have a knack for controlling the narrative.
You know what they're doing.
Yeah. This deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me.
Yeah, me too.
Not just in terms of understanding this this specific rivalry,
Yeah.
but like how information and perception, they play a role in every part of our lives.
Right. It's like we've been given this new lens to look at the world through.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. And I hope it encourages our listeners to be more like mindful of the information they take and to really think critically about the messages they're being exposed to. Because in the end, the most powerful weapon in any information war is a discerning mind.
That is very well said.
Thanks.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a step back and kind of recap what we've learned so far about this whole Kendrick and Drake thing.
Right.
We've talked about strategic silence, information control, image manipulation, you know, this clash of values within hip hop culture. What stands out to you as the most important takeaway?
I think for me, what's really compelling is how this analysis really kind of reframes the way we think about competition. It's not just about raw talent, or even, you know, hard work. It's about understanding the power of perception, the importance of timing, you know, and how you use information strategically to get what you want.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like we've been given this glimpse behind the curtain. You know, we see how these hidden machinations are working, not just in the music industry, but in so many areas of life.
I think so.
It's everywhere, really.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. This has been a truly enlightening conversation.
It has.
And before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this thought.
Right.
If even a rap rivalry can be understood through this lens of strategy and information warfare, what does that say about celebrity and success in the digital age?
That's a good question.
We'll explore that and more when we return. All right, so we're back, and we've been like really digging into this Kendrick Lamar and Drake rivalry.
Yeah.
Not as like, you know, your typical beef, but like as a strategic game with like high stakes.
Yeah.
It's about more than just the music, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've talked about image, information control, even how their music reflects like these different values within hip hop, but the source takes it even further.
Yeah.
Saying this war is like a struggle for cultural dominance.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. What do you think that means?
Yeah.
Is it really about like shaping the future of hip hop?
Okay, so break that down for me. What does cultural dominance even like look like in this context?
Well, I think it's about the power to define what's cool, you know, what's relevant, what matters in the world of hip hop.
Okay.
Both Kendrick and Drake. They're trying to set the agenda, influence taste, inspire the next generation of artists. Their music, their image, their every move is part of this bigger battle for influence.
So it's not just about who sells more records or wins more awards.
No, it's bigger than that.
It's about whose vision for hip hop like really connects.
Yeah, and has a lasting impact.
Yeah.
It's about shaping the culture.
Yeah.
Not just, you know, being a part of it. And the source argues that Kendrick, with his like strategic use of silence, his focus on quality, his carefully crafted image, he's playing this game masterfully.
It does seem like he's like several steps ahead.
Yeah.
You know? Do you think like Drake is even aware of how he's being played?
That's a good question.
Or is he like approaching this whole rivalry differently?
Yeah. I mean, it's possible that Drake is like operating more on instinct.
Okay.
While Kendrick's got this like calculated strategic mindset.
Right.
Or maybe Drake is just playing a totally different game altogether, one that's like focused on a broader appeal, on commercial success. I mean, you can't deny he's a master of marketing, branding, connecting with a massive audience.
Right. So it's almost like we're watching like two different approaches to success play out in real time.
Yeah.
Kendrick, the strategist, focused on like long-term cultural influence, right?
Yeah.
Drake, the master of the moment, you know, dominating the charts and the airwaves.
Yeah. And both approaches have their strengths.
Yeah.
I mean, Kendrick's getting critical acclaim.
Right.
He's got a devoted following.
Yeah.
Drake's breaking records.
Yeah.
He's achieved like global stardom.
It's fascinating, you know?
Yeah.
This dichotomy. And it makes you wonder, like, what do we really value?
Yeah. What do we value in art?
In art, in entertainment.
It's entertainment, yeah.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
it all comes back to that tension.
Right, that push and pull.
Between artistic integrity and commercial success.
It's always there.
It's at the heart of this rivalry, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not just like a hip-hop thing.
Yeah, right.
It's in any creative field.
Yeah, I think so.
How do you stay true to yourself while also trying to reach a wider audience?
That's the question.
It's that balancing act.
It is.
Right. And Kendrick and Drake, they're navigating that in these very different ways.
Yeah, they really are.
And their rivalry with all the moves and counter moves, it's playing out on this global stage.
Right.
It's not just influencing the music industry.
Yeah.
It's influencing how we think about, like, competition.
Right.
About success.
Yeah.
About the power of information.
Absolutely. It's like a case study in how to kind of survive and thrive in this digital age.
Where image and information, perception, it's everything.
It really is.
Whether you're, you know, an artist, an entrepreneur, just a person trying to make sense of the world.
Right.
There's lessons to be learned here.
I think so too.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the final takeaway?
Mm-hmm.
Who's winning this war?
Right.
Is there even like an answer to that question?
I don't think there's a simple answer. I mean, both Kendrick and Drake, they're playing the game so well.
Yeah.
And their rivalry has really pushed hip-hop forward.
Yeah.
You know, it sparked all these important conversations about art and commerce and cultural influence.
Right.
I think ultimately it's up to each of us to decide, like, whose vision speaks to us more.
And regardless of, you know, who wins in the end, this whole thing has already left its mark, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a reminder that there's always more than meets the eye, especially in this age where we're just like bombarded with information.
Right.
We have to stay engaged, think critically, keep asking questions. So, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating look at the strategic world of the Kendrick Drake rivalry.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure unpacking these ideas with you.
Yeah, likewise.
And until next time, keep your ears open, your mind sharp. And remember, even in music, there's always a deeper game being played.
Always.